Trying to stay one step ahead of Mother Nature is a constant battle for farmers the world over. But some savvy scientists think they might have worked out a way for cotton growers in central Queensland to do just that. And it's an unlikely piece of material that's potentially going to help them beat both drought and flood. Megan Woodward reports.
It looks like any other early cotton crop starting to prosper. But closer inspection can tell even the untrained eye that there are differences between these rows. Some have been given a head start in an attempt to beat Mother Nature.
This project came about mainly because emerald has a fairly variable climate. So what emerald traditionally has had is often in sort of middle of summer, January and February, it can sometimes be quite cloudy and wet, which is what we've seen over the last 5 or 6 years with a run of wetter than average seasons. But before that, we often had some very hot, dry years. And one of the things that makes the emerald climate unique is it's hot in each of our cotton areas during the summer, but emerald has hot, humid weather. And it's that interaction between the heat and humidity that can make it a challenge for growing cotton in this part of the world.
The cotton industry is worth big bucks. But in central Queensland, the mining boom and bad weather has threatened the bottom line for more years than most local growers would care to admit.
We had close to 7 years of really dry, sort of quite harsh conditions, and then we had the 3 or 4 years of flooding or overcast weather followed by wet picks. And so this last season was probably our first good one for quite a long time.
Once referred to as one of the most variable climates in the world by renowned climatologist Roger Stone, producing cotton in emerald is a vastly different game to the one being played by cotton-growing cousins further south. The 2008 floods ravaged the region. But the 2010-2011 floods absolutely decimated it. For grower Nick Morowitz, who farms off the Comet River just east of Emerald, the walls of water all but ruined the 700 hectares of cotton he had under flood irrigation.
You know, been some challenges, I guess, going back a couple of years ago. The flood years were pretty humbling, you know, water just sort of came in from every direction and, you know, threw a bit of a spanner in our projects, I guess. Pretty well our whole irrigated cropping area was underwater to some degree for a number of days. So we had all cotton in that year and it, you know, it basically destroyed all of it. But, you know, on the back of that, we got in and replanted different crops and, you know, there was a lot of earthworks to sort out and things to pick up and, you know, kept everyone busy for the summer, I can tell you that.
And he's been busy ever since, but for different reasons. After getting back on his feet, Nick Morowitz decided to change his whole planting window last season. He planted as early as regulations would allow, in an attempt to avoid midsummer weather. And it paid off. He grew his best cotton crop ever with a whole farm average of nearly 13 bales to the hectare.
Last year was an exceptional year for us. It went really well in all respects. We had cotton and sorghum in last year and yeah, both those crops yielded exceptionally well. The commodity prices were fairly strong and, you know, was just determined to get things back on track really firmly. You know, we started as early as we could, as early as the cotton planting window would let us, and we worked really hard to get all the crop in the first few days of the planting window. You know, the driver for that was just to try to bring our picking date forward and get out of that area where we have those successive weather events that create all the downgrades and the losses that we've incurred so severely in the previous years.
Scientist Paul Grundy from the Department of Agriculture was watching on like a hawk. A few clicks on the other side of town from Nick Morowitz's property, he too was trialling the idea of the early plant. Working with CSIRO scientist Steve Yates, they did a detailed climate analysis of conditions in emerald. Spring was identified as the most ideal time for cotton production as opposed to cotton planting.
Basically led us to ask the question, how could we make better use of the springtime conditions, and could we bring boll filling forward to basically get the business part of the crop done and dusted during those spring and very early summer period, and hopefully try and avoid some of those more variable conditions during the middle of summer.
It's quite nice weather. It's not too wet, it's not too dry, and it's not too hot. So that makes the management easy. You're not having a management upset by bad weather. So not only is the plant happy, management is easier at this time of year.
Growers traditionally plant in September and even as late as October, so the scientists started to look at August temperatures and seeing if planting could be pushed forward.
Found that if we could just warm the minimums up by about 2 degrees, basically we're in the game for being able to successfully establish cotton at that time of year, which would then bring forward flowering so that we'd have crops flowering at the very end of October and again really capitalise on that spring period for filling those bowls.
But all of the methodically collected weather data from emerald over the past 80 years indicated one major fall point in the fabulous plan. Overnight minimums in the region were about 2 degrees too cool for successful cotton growing. So began the hunt for the perfect winter warmer for freshly planted cotton seeds. The answer was found in this biodegradable film, more commonly referred to by growers as Glad Wrap.
There's been work done with biodegradable films with cotton and other crops around the world, and also from time to time in Australia. And we thought, given it wasn't a big ask and that we only need to raise temperatures by that little bit, we thought that biodegradable films in this environment might just get us over the line.
After trialling clear, black and coloured plastics, clear was deemed the best to warm the ground and lock in the heat overnight, raising soil temperatures by 2.5 to 3 degrees. It was laid on a small scale for the first time in emerald last year.
With the film, we're flowering anywhere between 7 days to 14 days ahead of when we didn't use the film at all. But more importantly, it actually allows us to sow quite reliably in August compared to September. So we've gained development with the film, speeding the plant up, but we've also gained a good month or more by planting a month earlier. So overall, we've got quite a big head start compared to what you would normally do by planting around that early to mid-September.
This year, they rolled the film on a commercial scale and the growth difference is obvious. Both rows planted on the 3rd of August, one with biodegradable film and the other without. The trial plant is on Hamish Miller's property on the outskirts of Emerald. He says it's a thrill to be part of something new and successful.
Yeah, exactly. For many, many years, for 30 plus years, we've been kind of doing the same stuff, and I think it's really important that we break the system and look for new ways of farming. So look, it's really exciting development at this stage.
And the man behind the invention is pretty excited too.
Well, in Ireland, where it rains probably 300 days of the year, somebody had the idea of creating a little greenhouse that you can put in the field. So plastics have been used in agriculture for about this last 15 years. With the emergence and the development of degradable plastics, what I've really done is put a degradable plastic into use in agriculture, and where it hasn't really been before.
David, is it? Yep.
David McGrath is riding the wave of early success, but he was put under the pump at a recent field day showing local growers the results of early planting with film. Everyone wanted to know how much results like these would cost.
We could deliver a product to the farmers for around $270, probably north of $270 per hectare. So what they're really getting for that is the ability to go in on their ground probably a whole month earlier than what is traditionally acceptable. So they're getting an extended year as such, and obviously the benefits of the mulch, you're able to probably knock 6 weeks off the time to full maturity as well. So really there's time saving, there's water saving. We've been able to demonstrate up to a 29% increase in the yield. So really the plastic would pay for itself quite quickly.
Nick Morowitz says the release of new GM cotton onto the market in coming years should bolster the research results of today even further.
The key for earlier planting in central Queensland as far as making that a reality is in the next couple of years when there's a commercial release of Bollgard 3 cotton. That'll sort of unshackle us from the current constraints of the planting window that dictates our starting date. So that's certainly going to allow people to conduct their own experimentation, and this work that we've seen conducted here in the last couple of years will, I think it'll give people confidence to, come back to September 1 or, possibly even to the middle of August in certain years.
You want to hold the end of that?
But there's a way to go. Machinery to physically lay the plastic on a commercial scale will need to be developed to help turn this experiment into everyday farm practice.
We need to be able to lay 8 rolls of plastic for cotton for the scale of operations that they have here. We want to reduce the number of passes, and really at the minute there is existing machinery that's out there. There tends to be an 8-row cultivator to a 12-row cultivator on every cotton farm already. So really at the moment we're looking to just add components to those machines. So for marginal cost, we could have a machine that could lay 8 rolls of plastic or 12 rolls of plastic quite quickly.
But for now, the scientists working on the trial want at least another 3 years of data under their belt before they start worrying about advances in machine technology.
It's one thing to get a plant out of the ground, but it's also got to grow really well. So the films warm the soil up, but they obviously don't do anything for the air temperature. So once the plants come out, it's still exposed to the elements. So what we're hoping to do is by building a fairly rigorous profile about how the plant is performing under a range of different seasons, and basically get an idea of what the risk is associated with this tactic as opposed to what growers are doing now.
And they're hoping that the forecast for farmers across the Central Highlands predicts easier days ahead.
I hope that I don't see the faces I saw a few years ago when this area was firstly ravaged by drought and then ravaged by floods, and that sense of, well, this climate's really beating us a little bit, and that we've pulled through that, and there's a sense that we can do the crop a little bit more reliably and in step with the climate than we were before. I'd love to see that.
We're pretty resilient, and we've all been here before, and the next flood or rainfall is just around the corner that will continue to improve and increase production.
And we're pleased to report that the August sown cotton started to flower at the end of last week as hoped, and is on track for picking before an unpredictable summer kicks in.